You say you love God, but does He recognize this love? Because heaven is not moved by empty declarations, it is moved by real surrender. And this is the contradiction that few have the courage to face. There are a multitude that speak of God, sing to God, post verses about God, but live as if He were a sentimental accessory, not the absolute Lord of all decisions. This is the silent root of the spiritual frustration of many. It is not that God is far away. It is that there is a love that is spoken but not lived, a faith that is performed but without depth. Loving God has become a beautiful idea, but not a concrete lifestyle. And that is why today we're going to tear away the religious veneer and reveal what it really means to love God, not according to culture, but according to heaven. Because the truth is simple and brutal. God is not looking for emotional fans. He is looking for obedient children. John 14:15 has already killed the argument. If you love me, keep my commandments. This means that the love that heaven recognizes has nothing to do with how much you cry in church, but with how much you obey on Monday. This is where most people stumble, because we've learned to measure our spirituality by how we feel, but God measures it by how we choose. The emotional altar generation needs to rediscover the altar of obedience. And maybe you can relate to this. You love the idea of God, but you can't stand His processes. You seek the comfort He can give, but you avoid the confrontation He demands. This isn't love, it's conditioned attachment. Let's face it, the world has taught you to put your feelings on the throne, and anything that goes against that feels like repression. But Jesus didn't come to validate His will. He came to crucify it. And only those who understand this can truly love God. Look at Peter, for example. At first, he was your typical impulsive follower, full of enthusiasm but no structure. He said he would die for Christ, and hours later he denied it for fear of being associated with Him. This is the portrait of many modern Christians, big on promises, fragile under pressure. But something changes radically in Peter after the Holy Spirit invades him. That same man who trembled before a servant in the courtyard begins to face authorities, prisons, and threats with supernatural boldness. What happened? He stopped loving Jesus only with his mouth and began to love with his life. Real love is born of total surrender, not of occasional excitement. And perhaps here lies the greatest mistake of our time, thinking that loving God is something you feel once in a while and not something that transforms every choice. Loving God is letting Him rewrite your agenda, your desires, your morality. It is when you pray and, even without an answer, you continue to trust. It is when no one is watching and you choose the truth because you know He is there. It is when you forgive not because the person deserves it, but because you chose to obey the cross. This is love. A love that is proven behind the scenes, not on stage. A love that manifests itself when you say no to sin, even when everything inside you screams yes. Nietzsche said that faith does not move mountains, only those who build them. A provocative phrase, but it fails. Because true faith not only moves mountains, it moves the human heart toward the impossible. But this faith demands something that modern man detests: surrender. And without surrender, there is no true love for God. There is only ego with a spiritual veneer. Christianity has become a performance of convenient values, where you follow God as long as He fits into your plan. But the gospel was never about improving your life. It is about dying to it. And loving God is exactly that, allowing Him to destroy everything that separates you from Him, even if that includes parts of you that you have always protected. It is easy to say that you love God when everything is going well, but real love is proven in silent decisions, in daily choices, in invisible renunciation. When you stop responding to that message because you know it takes you away from your purpose. When you say no to a proposal that would bring you profit but would hurt your integrity. When you pray even when you're tired, read the Word even when you don't feel like it, worship even when you don't have music. True love doesn't depend on the environment, it creates the environment. It shapes character, disciplines desires, confronts sins, and forms testimonies. And this is where it all comes down to. If someone looked at your routine today, without hearing your words, without seeing your stories, would that person know that you love God? Because the truth is that heaven doesn't react to the aesthetics of your love, it reacts to its essence. And the essence of love for God is obedience. Not obedience out of fear, but out of conviction. The obedience that comes from someone who understands that God is not an idol to be pleased. He is a king to be followed. Now, if this sounds heavy to you, maybe what you used to call love was just emotional attachment, and that's okay. Recognizing that is a step toward liberation. But the question now is, are you willing to love God not just with words, but with decisions? Because that's when love stops being a theory and becomes a fact. And when you reach that level of surrender, you understand that loving God is not an emotion. It's a daily choice, even when it hurts. But that's when love is tested, when it hurts. When God's silence echoes louder than our prayers. When everything we've planned falls apart, and yet we choose to stay. Loving God when everything is going well is easy. Even the world knows how to do it. What distinguishes a true worshiper is what he does when God doesn't say yes. That's when many give up, not because they haven't felt God, but because they can't stand the idea of loving Him without immediate reward. The unregenerate human heart doesn't love the Lord, it loves what the Lord can give. And that's not love, it's a bargain in disguise. Heaven isn't moved by declarations made on sunny days. It's looking for believers who keep loving even in the storm. Look at Abraham. God calls him to sacrifice his son. The same son he promised, the same one who took years to arrive. And in that moment, God isn't just testing Abraham's faith. You are asking, do you love me more than you love what I have given you? And this is the question that burns deep within all who truly want to walk with God. Do you love God? Or do you love the gifts He has placed in your hands? Divine logic challenges even our purest ethics. What seems absurd to man is sometimes what reveals faithfulness before God. True love for God is not measured by how much you celebrate what you receive, but by how much you remain steadfast even when all seems lost. That is why Jesus, in Gethsemane, cried out a phrase that defines authentic Christianity. "Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me, but let your will be done." His love for the Father was not proven in miracles, it was proven in the silence of the garden, where his soul sweated drops of blood, but his decision remained intact. And here is a truth that few have the courage to face. If your love for God disappears when He does not do what you want, then the center of your faith is you. The true gospel teaches us that loving God means continuing to obey even when we don't understand. It means remaining at the altar even when the fire seems to have died down. It means having enough faith to believe that He is good, even when life says otherwise. And this is not about denying the pain. It is about redeeming the pain with purpose. Many people have abandoned God when they lost someone, when they were not healed, when their marriage was not restored. Frustration turned into spiritual coldness. But this only reveals that their faith was anchored in the outcome, not in the relationship. Is that cruel to say? No, it is liberating. Because as long as you love God only for the blessings, you will never be free. Only unconditional love breaks the cycle of disguised idolatry. And this love, no matter how hard it may be, is the only one that transforms us. Kierkegaard said that, to love is to give everything and demand nothing. This applies strongly to our relationship with God, because He has already given us everything: His Son, His grace, His presence. And when He asks something of us, as He did of Abraham, it is not to punish us, but to purify us. God never asked for Isaac because He wanted a boy to die. He asked because He wanted to resurrect the heart of a father who was perhaps putting the promise above the promiser. The love for God that survives the test is the love that refuses to turn pain into doubt. Loving God when it hurts is when you pray and seem unheard, but you keep praying. It is when you serve and are not recognized, but you keep serving. It is when you fast and nothing changes, but you keep consecrating yourself. Because you do not do it for an exchange, you do it for love. And true love does not give up when it does not receive an immediate return. It persists because it has already decided in whom it is rooted. And if you have come this far feeling that you no longer have the strength to continue, or even thinking that your love for God has cooled, listen to this with an awakened spirit. God does not measure you by your performance, but by your permanence. He knows that His love for you will always come before your love for Him. But He also knows that the Holy Spirit is there, inside you, working to bring you back to the center. Don't give up. Silence is not absence. Pain is not rejection. Sometimes what seems like abandonment is just the field where faith matures. So, if truly loving God is the goal, embrace the process. Because the faith that survives the desert is the one that truly reaches the promised land. The love that heaven recognizes is born in the fire of renunciation, blooms in the soil of faithfulness, and grows stronger in the silence of trust. This love doesn't need everything to work out. It just needs to know that God is still God. And if you believe that, even in the midst of pain, then yes, you love Him.